You're listening to Turi Writers' She Said What podcast. I'm Turi, along with Marcy Persky. Although we're putting this podcast up after the Titan submersible has been found to have imploded, the level of our sympathy is slightly below what you might have hoped, but knowing us, about what you'd expect. I came home from work and I realized that I had been very mean about the people in the Titan bathtub toy.
Yeah.
I accused them of every possible cluelessness, but mostly it was the disclaimer that they had to sign that the CBS guy talked about, where 3 times on page 1 it says you could die, and still they went. I don't think when I get on an airplane it says 3 times on my ticket that I could die.
If it said 1 time, I wouldn't go. I'm not kidding. If I even read the word die, not even in any kind of context, I would not step on board of anything.
You can die walking out in the street, but if somebody hung a sign outside your front door that said, nobody has inspected all the cars going down your block today. The steering wheels could come off in people's hands. The brake pedals might not function at all. So just know when you walk out your front door today, there are 65 ways you could die before you get to the corner.
Thank you. Now I'm agoraphobic.
The thing is that
leave my house.
The same people, I would warrant you, that go for this crap are the same people who bitch about government intervention, which is government intervention is the reason the steering wheel doesn't come off in your hand and the brake pedal has to be connected. This is why.
Did you see the little game controller thing that they are using or they were using it to control this whole underwater?
I'm not clear about. Supposedly, it doesn't really have much of its own power, and yet they say you control it and it moves and it goes closer and further away. So I am completely unclear about how much control. I mean, again, that little stick could be a prop for all I know.
It looked to me, the whole thing looked to me like the equivalent of a rat car. You know what a rat car is?
No, what is it?
It's people have these hobbies and they build cars out of pieces of old cars. And they don't really look like a car. And they drive them all over the place. And they have big shows. And it's like this really popular kind of underground scene. And it's called a rat car. And you should just look them up later.
I will.
You'll laugh at what they look like. And this looked like a rat submarine to me. It's like bunks of other things put together.
Well, they did say they used consumer grade lighting. They went to, I forget where, like Home Depot, and they had some beauty supply store. I forget what. The steering thing was literally, it wasn't made after modeling it on a game console. It was a game console steering. I mean, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, so many things I want to know. It's supposed to be attached to the mothership. And I want to know, what did it attach to the mothership with? Like a paper clip?
Fish line.
It could be. I mean, is it something you can cut through with your teeth? Someone else took a trip on this thing and said, well, they talk about the 3 things that could do you in, going underneath something, so don't go underneath something, a fishing net, so don't go near it. And I'm thinking it has one itsy bitsy window. You get a better view with the bargain basement ticket on Spirit Airlines.
Can't say I've ever flown Spirit Airlines.
Well, I have a slogan for them, by the way, that they haven't used yet.
Does it have the word die in it?
When you only need to be there in spirit.
Sell that to them.
I've watched.
See what happens. Well, I got to tell you, my biggest takeaway from all of this,
yes,
and I'm still shaking my head, is the stepson of one of these missing millionaires going to a Blink-182 concert.
And then Cardi B goes after him.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of with Cardi B. I mean,
wait a minute.
Maybe this guy doesn't even. Maybe this kid, doesn't like his stepfather.
Ah, there you go.
Or all he's thinking about is the money that's going to rain down on him.
I don't think that's it.
It's a bad look.
How old is the kid?
Not a kid.
Right. So who knows how long this stepfather's even been around?
Still,
I don't care
if my dog was lost in a stupid submarine somewhere, I wouldn't go to a concert.
I don't know about
Well, I
this
actually love my dog, but
performative grief thing where you're supposed to behave this way, you're supposed to behave that way.
I'm not even talking about grief. I'm just talking about rich people.
Well, now you've totally lost me.
I'm sorry, but out of respect, even for this guy who's going to make you so freaking rich that you could take a submarine down
I'm
into
sorry,
to look at the
stepson,
wreckage of it, or
stepson.
stepson.
He may
Sorry,
get nothing at all. I might feel different if it was his
you
actual.
know he's going to get some money. You know
No,
because
no, I know.
stepfather means his mother is married to this guy.
Excuse me, plenty of stepkids do not inherit from the step parent because a step parent has kids from probably a former marriage. He's lucky if his mother gets something.
No, she's his wife.
Here's the problem here. Your spouse is an excellent stepdad who has formally adopted your daughter, and he's an exemplary person, and he regards the stepchild as his own child, but not everyone is like that. Your crappy other husband, the second model, he wasn't exactly dedicated to the children from the spouse before him.
No, but he wasn't a millionaire either.
Hold up now. If your children, who did not, to put it mildly, have a great experience with your second husband, these children of your first marriage, if he
Yes.
were down in a bathtub toy with one tiny window, that's another thing. You get one stinking window, $250,000. They couldn't put a couple of extra windows in there. And furthermore, to look at the Titanic is like gazing at your own future, it turns out. So
Well,
anyway,
yeah, that I don't get anyway.
yeah, it's not like you go into space and you get a whole new perspective on the universe.
I wouldn't do that
You
either.
see a dark wrecked ship, which
By
is
the way.
exactly what you're going to be if that paper clip snaps. So, your second husband was not nice to your children from your first marriage. And if he were locked in a bathtub toy, I would buy tickets for your kids to go to a Blink 180 whatever, and nobody would fault me for it. And
I
neither
don't
would
know.
you.
Okay, I guess I judge at different levels of how do I put this? Financial entitlement
Maybe
and
maybe he
the
already
way it
knows he's
looks.
not going to
I mean,
inherit anything. When do you suddenly care how it looks?
well, I'm not famous, so I don't care
He's
about how
not
anything
famous.
looks.
He's just a kid with a wealthy stepfather who's going to be, you
Well,
know,
he's obviously famous enough that people know who he is, that his face is plastered everywhere.
well, if your family is wealthy, this tends to happen.
Well,
And
see, if my family was wealthy, I'd be spending a whole bunch of money right now.
if my evil
Yeah.
stepfather or even a stepfather for whom I had no particular feeling whatsoever, except maybe a mild dislike, I had concert tickets that I had paid for myself. Why waste the money just because his mother married a rich guy with no common sense? No, that's the other thing. Every one of these people, zero common sense. And the news is interviewing anyone who's been on this trip before. And I don't know why
Yeah.
they're giving interviews because it just tells the world that you have no common sense.
Speaking of that,
Yes.
I want to know why this is all of a sudden the most important news story in the entire galaxy. Like, why has this all of a sudden superseded what's going on in Washington, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Russia, what's going on? I mean, there's stuff going on all over the world. And like 6 out of 10 stories on a certain news website, respected news website, no longer by me, were all about this sub last night.
To what do you attribute this fascination? I have several ideas.
Laziness on behalf of editors that assign stories.
Well, you're the pro. I have other ideas.
Okay, what's your idea?
Well, it makes interesting pictures, and people like to imagine themselves in the scenario.
Dying in a rat sub?
No, being heroic in the rescue
Oh,
vehicle,
yeah, yeah.
and all of the militaries and the people who design these rescue missions and crafts and military and coast guard, they love to show off their toys and use them. So it's very impressive to have the Canadian military flying around going, oh, well, we heard something. That, by the way, cracks me up. We heard something. It's the middle of the freaking Atlantic Ocean.
And you hear orchids.
Yeah, I mean, you can hear it, even I, with no training whatsoever, am pretty sure that you could hear a lot of things coming from the ocean. That's just, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, or in this case, a submarine scientist. And so they say, well, we heard some banging. And then somebody else is like, we don't know what it is. Thank God for the person who said, we don't know what it is.
Well, you know what? I'm going to digress for one
Wait,
second,
I
and then
just
you
want
can
to
go back to
one
tell
more
me why
thing,
people care.
which
Okay.
which proves that you
Okay.
are
Give me the
right.
other.
The other thing is they're rich. So rich people
Well,
are interesting to us. Just look at all the stuff you read every day. Rich people
except,
fascinate
well,
us.
I read it, and then I read it kind of like a car wreck because I don't like it, because my mind always goes to, geez, you spent $250,000 on these jeans. How many children would that feed?
That's not why. Yeah, no, wait, because I
All of
call
this
BS
money,
on that.
all of
You
this
think
money,
to
all
yourself, she should send half of that to me. That's what
well,
you
that
think.
that's true. There's it's half and half, but all the money that's
Yes,
being spent
yes.
by all these with all these military resources and everything else for these four mega rich people that go underwater in a rat submarine. I want to compare that to how much money is spent when a migrant boat tips over and you have a bunch of migrants like in the water drowning.
Well, you and everybody on the BBC, I will say score one for the
Oh, I'm
multi-billionaires.
British.
100 people, all of a sudden, you've always dreamed of it. To the credit of the very wealthy, 100 of these migrants were plucked out of the water by somebody's luxury yacht. So there you go. They did a
Yeah.
nice thing. But there's no rule that says fabulously wealthy people can't be nice. There's no rule about that.
No, I'm not saying that they're not nice.
You
Let's
see?
put this up against all the migrant ships and boats and overloaded people escaping from really horrible places.
Okay, I've got another theory. Because
Yeah,
even if you pluck them out of the water, there are still problems to solve. And then somehow you become
where do they go?
responsible for solving them. Right. But if you pluck the bazillionaires out of the water, problem
They have
solved.
houses.
Right. They're fine. They can go home to any of their several homes, no doubt. Here's another thing for you to consider. Some of the countries involved have rules, like if you get into trouble in Alaska and they have to send out a helicopter to save your sorry butt, you
You
pay.
pay for it.
Right. But I just learned on the BBC that many of the rescuing or hoped for rescuing agencies who are looking for the bathtub toy slash rat car don't have such a policy. So if they found these people, which is increasingly unlikely, they will then be faced with presenting them with a bill and hoping they pay.
And they better hope that that stepson doesn't just buy Blink 182.
Haven't you seen enough Disney movies? Don't you understand how the stepson thing is supposed to work?
Yeah.
What happened to you?
Most of the Disney movies make me cringe, to be honest.
Well,
I love The Lion King.
I like
It's my
Sword in the
favorite.
Stone. Sword in the Stone is really the only one I liked.
Yeah.
I think I liked Sword in the Stone because there was no fair maiden in distress.
Hmm.
I'm not interested in the fair maiden in distress. I also, when I see the ones with the fair maiden in distress, I always side with the crone. Those poor unfortunate souls. I always like the hag. That's tells you pretty much everything you need to know about my character. So
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
as we
So,
record
so
this,
comparing this to a Disney movie,
if this were a Disney movie,
and
there
they were four women.
and nobody would give there would either be several princes who dive down and get them, or there'd be some friendly fish who can speak, who they encourage to lift the submarine to the surface. But it's not a Disney movie, and about 3 hours after we finish recording this, there will be no hope for these people. So I want to make it clear that on a basic human level, I feel bad for them. But on the other hand, every time I read about one of these adventure travelers falling off some 50,000 foot cliff face, or doing some
Yeah,
acrobatic off of the Empire State Building. I just think to myself, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if anything goes wrong, just don't expect me to put on sackcloth
agreed.
and ashes. And that may make me a harsh person. But whenever one of these people succumbs and you hear the family saying, well, and it's usually well, he died doing what he loved to do. And I think, well, great then. Fine. Next.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
lovely.
Anything that says die on the first page of a contract, I'm not signing. I'm not going.
We agree. Assuming you've come this far because you enjoy the podcast, may we recommend my book, She Said What? A Life on the Air. It's available at your neighborhood bookstore or on Amazon. And if you're feeling especially generous, please leave the podcast a good review. Thanks.